So I thought it would be fun today to do a book haul. I've been exploring Booktube and seeing all the kinds of videos that people make and the ones that I like, the ones that I have ideas for. January has been a very good month for new books, we'll say. Partly because I've been watching so many Booktube channels and seeing all of these cool books that I've never heard of before or never given a try before, so I've been inspired to get a lot of books. So these aren't in any particular order. They were just, all the books I gathered up from around the house that I know that I bought this month and carried over here and piled up while my family looked at me like I was a crazy person. To start with, The Lies of Lamora. This book was definitely a Booktube one. I've seen a few different Booktubers recommend this one and say that they really enjoyed it. When I go to the bookstore, I tend to kind of skim the fantasy books as I make my way to the sci-fi books. So I've seen this one a few times. I just haven't picked it up and bought it. But a lot of people said they really enjoyed it, so I went ahead and picked up a copy. I got the little mass market paperback, so it's my low commitment. If it's great, I'll buy nicer ones. If it's not... So this is one that I picked up, Perdido Street Station by China Mayville. This is one that I picked up because of the author. I've only ever read one other book of his. I believe it was called The Scar. I enjoyed it. It was a strange one. It kind of threw me a little bit for a loop, but I do think about it now and then, and I do remember really enjoying it. So I decided that I wanted to go ahead and try a second book by him and see what I think. So this is just a little book I picked up from a bargain rack on Authorian Myths. I'm actually writing a story that's kind of based in that mythology, and so whenever I see books that are informative about the mythology, I tend to pick them up, even if they look like they're not like the most rigorous or they're not, like the Sir Mallory edition, because a lot of times I find even in smaller, more simple versions of the book, you'll find little trinkets and treasures, little pieces of information about the mythology that you either missed in the more in-depth analysis or just weren't mentioned in the in-depth analysis. So when I dive into mythology, I tend to pick up everything I can find in that realm. So these are my Stannislaw Lem books that I have bought this month. So I have already read and I already own a copy of Solaris, but it was one of those cheap beat up paperbacks that had like a movie still for the cover rather than its own cover, which I am not a fan of that. I like a book to have its own cover. It's a separate entity. I don't want to have the picture of the actors on the cover of my books. I really love this book. I love every version of the movie that I've seen and the book, and I decided it was time to have a nice copy of this book. And while I was at it, I decided to pick up, because this is the only book I've ever read by Stannislaw Lem, but I really, really enjoy it. So I decided to go ahead and pick up two more books of his, The Invincible, and then just a Stanislaw Lem reader. I don't know much about the stories in here and what they're about, but I have very high hopes for these. I love the writer. I love the way that he thinks. I love the way that he writes. And this is actually an older piece of sci-fi. I don't know when it was written. My brain is saying like 1960s. It's reserved 1961. So yeah, that seems to be an era of science fiction that I really enjoy. The 60s, early 70s, especially from Eastern European and Russian writers. And I believe he's Eastern European. Poland, maybe? Anyways, I think these are going to be a lot of fun to read. So this is one that I bought. It's by the author Lamataset Jr. I've actually never read a book by him, but I keep seeing his books at the bookstore and almost buying them. And it might be because a lot of his books have book covers where the paintings are done by Donato Giancola. He's one of my favorite painters. And so when I see those book covers, I am just like, I just want to buy the book for the book cover alone. And then I always start second guessing myself. Well, what if the book's not actually good? It's just the cover illustrations that I'm drawn to. And I end up not buying them over and over again. So I found this book in a bargain rack, and it has a bunch of short stories in it that are tied to one of the worlds in his novel series. And so I thought that this would be a good dipping my toe in the water, so I could read some of these short stories, see if I like the writing, see if I like the world building. And then if I do, then I have an excuse to buy a bunch of novels that's not just because Donato's an amazing cover artist. So this was a fun one that I found. It's Dictionary of the Strange, Curious, and Lovely, and it's exactly what it purports to be. It is literally just a dictionary of strange, beautiful words. And I just thought this would be a fun little trinket to pick up here and there and just see interesting words and see what ideas they give me and what little creative things might spawn from a random entry from the Dictionary of the Strange, Curious, and Lovely. And it has a beautiful cover, which is always a plus. So this one was actually an impulse buy. I know next to nothing about this book. I've never heard anyone else mention it. There's a siren. Is it over? No. It was in the science fiction section, which from the description, it seems like it should have been in the fantasy section. But one of the descriptions is that it's a cross between Liv Grossman's The Magicians, Elizabeth Kostova's The Historian, and is the anti-Harry Potter you didn't know you wanted. That sounds like an intriguing mix. I've never read the Harry Potter series or The Magicians, but I've seen the movies for both of them, or the TV show for one of them, and I enjoyed them. I've also read The Historian, which I really liked as well. I thought this one just looked like a lot of fun, and the writers are two women, I believe, from Russia. I don't know, I tend to like reading things by writers from other countries. I feel like there's just a different flavor to them. I'm really excited about this one. I think that this could be a little hidden treasure that might be a lot of fun. Or not. I might be very disappointed. We'll see. The Inhabited Island by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. These writers are the writers who wrote Roadside Picnic, which is the book that a lot of the Stalker movie and the Stalker games are based off of. And I love that book. I think that's right up there as like one of my favorite sci-fi books. I love that type of sci-fi. Again, it's that era that I like. Again, Russian writers. And so I figured it was time that I read some more books by them rather than just the main one. So I have high hopes for this. I really enjoyed Roadside Picnic, and I think that this one's going to be really good as well. Oh boy, these ones are a little troublesome. I started with Exhalation. There is a sci-fi movie called Arrival, which I absolutely love. I would put it in like one of the top 5 favorite movies. When I found where the short story came from, who the writer was, I definitely knew that I had to read the short story that Arrival came from, because it's just a fantastic movie. And so I was really excited, and I looked up who the author was, and I went ahead and bought the short story collection. And then I figured I didn't want to know which short story it was. I was just going to read through, and when I came to it, and that was going to be great. As I was reading this, I was finding that I didn't really enjoy a lot of the short stories I was reading. They felt very little story, a lot of exposition, and it felt like a lot of times the characters in the story were just like a puppet for him to talk about his ideas with how technology affects our lives, which, you know, they were interesting ideas, but they didn't feel like stories to me. So I got to the end of it and realized the short story that Arrival is from was nowhere to be found in this volume. Apparently, it was in the volume that came out before. I don't know how I missed that detail, but I missed that detail. So then I'm torn. Do I buy another copy of short stories from him when I didn't enjoy the first one very much? But I still really wanted to read the short story that Arrival came from, because again, I love that movie. There has to be something in that short story. It has to be a good short story because what came from it is so good. You can see which one I chose. I ended up buying the second copy. I think this time around, I'm just going to skip right to the short story that has Arrival, or that Arrival was based on. And if I enjoy it, I will read the rest. And if not, well... So this is another mythology one, this time Egyptian mythology. As I mentioned in my newbie tag video, I am writing a book about Egyptian mythology. It's going to be a series of 15 short stories that are each tied to different archetypal themes for each of the Egyptian gods. And then I'm doing a series of paintings that correlate with each one. Every time I see a book on Egyptian mythology, I buy it. It's getting really hard to find any new ones. There's not a lot of them out there. So whenever I find one that I don't already have, I get pretty excited. So I saw this one at the bookstore this week, and of course I immediately bought it, and I got it home, and it turns out I already have a copy of this book. It's just been rebranded. They put a new cover on it, changed the text around a little bit, but I already own a copy of this book. So now I have a duplicate. I'm not sure what to do with. So this one, I was actually really excited to buy. Another artist mentioned it. It's called Enchanted, A History of Fantasy Illustration. One of the things that I really struggled with as an artist when I was younger was the idea that if I painted fantastical things, that it wasn't real art. And I actually ended up giving up on art and getting a chemistry degree because of that, until in my late 20s, I was finally able to start reconciling the idea that things that are fantastical can still be art. I really was excited for this book because one of the things that it gets into is, you know, getting into art history, all the times that art, you know, like classical art, you know, illustrated mythology and illustrated religious scenes and things like that, and how ingrained fantastical work is throughout art history, and a lot of things that nobody would question whether they're art or not. And I think also, you know, sci-fi fantasy books have struggled with that same mischaracterization, where they're not taken seriously. They're not seen as on equal footing. They're not literature. But I think that that's finally starting to break down a little bit. I think that, you know, examples like Lord of the Rings really show that fantastical stories, sci-fi and fantasy, can be very literary, and I think in a lot of ways often address a lot more philosophical themes than regular fiction does. So I hope to see that continue to be broken down, that idea that fantastical art or fantastical writing is not on the equal footing with other types of creative, you know, manifestations of that type. So this book was actually a gift from my friend James. He sent this to me for Christmas, and it's by Seth Godin. It's called Shipping Creative Work, The Practice. I really love Seth Godin's work, and I have read a few books of his that I found really helpful, really changed the way you think about your relationship with different parts of your business and trying to create value for people with your business. I'm really excited to read this one. A lot of times me and my friend James, we work on building our businesses together and share ideas, tips, and, you know, strategies, marketing strategies and things like that. Yeah, I can't wait to read this one. So this is one where I have read the first book in the series and I absolutely loved it. I watched the movie first, Annihilation, and I really enjoyed the movie. And it kind of had like a stalkerish roadside picnic feel to it. And one day I saw the book Annihilation in like a bargain bin at the bookstore for like $5, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll read the book for that. And I loved the book even more than the movie, which the movie was really good, but There was something about that story, like being able to get into the character's head was really, just really added a lot to the story. The story was so surreal and introspective that a lot of it came down to, you know, her perceptions as she was going through the story. And so that was really enjoyable. But after I finished reading it, I put it away and warm, fuzzy thoughts about it. But I didn't think to look for more books in the series because it felt so complete. It felt so self-contained that it didn't even occur to me that there were more books in the series. So when I was at the bookstore the other day, I saw the trilogy. There were all 3 of them, beautiful matching set. And yeah, so I knew that I had to read the rest of the books in the series. I would like to get the matching first and third book to go with it, but I figured I had to start with the second one because I wanted to read this in the near future as soon as possible. So I'm really excited about this one. This one's going to be really good. I know it. So this one, Gene Wolfe, Sword and Citadel. This is the second book in a series, the second half of the Book of the New Sun. I haven't read the first book yet. I've heard good things about it. It intrigues me. I think that I'm going to like it, but I haven't read it yet. When I saw this at the store, though, it is the matching copy for the first volume I have. So I went ahead and bought it because I'm a completionist. I like to have the matching set. Hopefully I enjoy the first book. I think I will. I've heard good things about it that make it sound like it's going to be really interesting. So we'll see how that one goes. So these two, Glenn Cook, The Black Company. So this is one where I did read the first book in this series, The Black Company, and I enjoyed it. There were some things that gave me issues with it. I found the writing style to be a little off-putting. It felt very staccato and dry in a weird way that I can't quite put my finger on. But I found myself, I did enjoy the story and the plot and the characters, and I ended up getting pretty sucked into it. And so I decided that I would go ahead and get this 3-volume edition so I could read the next 2 books. While I was at it, I found this hard copy, which is a later book in the series, but it was in a bargain rack for $5, and I figured, why not? So I think these are going to be a lot of fun to read. So this is one, I read the first book in the series actually this month, All Systems Red, the first Murderbot book, and I found myself very charmed by it. I really enjoyed it. At the very beginning, I was a little put off by the really strong narrative voice of the protagonist, but I found myself getting into the rhythm of it pretty quickly and it not feeling too forced. And I ended up really enjoying the story. I thought it was very poignant and to the point. I bought this one when I saw it in the store, but I can't read it yet because I haven't read the other 3 novellas in the series that come after All Systems Red. So I'm going to try and get those and then I'll read this one. But I have high hopes for this one. I think this one's going to be really good. So these 2 are also thanks to Booktube. I'm new to Booktube in the sense that I just discovered Booktube in the last few months, maybe November-ish, like 2 months ago, not quite 2 months ago. And I just been devouring it. I love it. One of the things that I discovered along with discovering Booktube is that there's such a thing as book crates and book memberships. You send people money and they send you surprise books every month. That just sounds like Christmas every month to me. So I was so excited when I realized that that was actually a thing. So I went out and I found 2 subscriptions that are sci-fi themed. So I subscribed to them, and this month I got my first books from one of the subscription boxes, and these are the 2 books that they sent me. Tell the Machine Goodnight by Katie Williams and Sea of Rust by Robert Cargill. This one I'm a little skeptical of. I guess it's like a woman who works with like a type of technology or social media type thing that tells people how to be happy, but does it? I'm not sure. This one's, I'm a little skeptical about whether this will be something I enjoy reading, but we'll see. Maybe I'll give it a shot. This one looks a little more up my alley. This one looks like a lot of fun. It's basically about a robot, I believe, that kind of rebels against all the other authoritarian robots after they've wiped out humanity. That sounds like it could be really interesting. It sounds like there could be some good stuff in there. So I'm excited to read this one. I think it's going to be fun. And yeah, so those are my book subscription books of the month. So this is another one that I have heard about on social media. A lot of people spoke highly of it and recommended it. The synopsis of it intrigued me. And I actually first heard about it when my friend Kira was illustrating alternate cover for a book club. I really liked her cover and I asked what it was for, and she told me about this book, and she had listened to the audiobook of it while she was painting the cover. I was just really intrigued by how she described it and by her cover. So after I heard about it on a few booktubes as well, I decided I was going to pick up a copy of it and give it a try. So it's a little more fantastical, but I think it could be a lot of fun. We'll see. So this is one that I bought just because it's pretty. I'm not gonna lie. I do really enjoy buying books on mythology and fairy tales and folk tales. So this was one where actually I had already bought the first copy. I split it up between a few weeks. So I had bought the first one first, and then a few weeks later I went back and bought the second one that goes with it. So I have the complete set. I just thought they were really beautiful books. They have like a really nice engraved leather covering. I actually already have several really pretty copies of Brothers Grimm's fairy tales, but it doesn't hurt to have one more. So yeah, I thought these were really cute, and I went ahead and bought the set of them. So this is one that is definitely thanks to Booktube. So I've seen a lot of these in the bookstores and, you know, noticed them, but they never set off like my spider tingly sense of this is going to be a really good sci-fi fantasy book. They tended to just look to me like they were like more thriller-ish or murder novel or something. So they didn't really appeal to me. I was definitely guilty of judging them by their cover, I think. And just the marketing, whoever marketed these didn't market them to me. But I've heard so many people talk about the reasons that they like these books, why they like this writer, how much they enjoyed them, that I figured I'm going to give it a shot and see if I like it anyways, despite the cover. And I mean, it's not a bad cover. It doesn't look like a book that I'm normally, the themes are what I'm interested in reading. So we're going to give it a try and see how it goes. If not, I blame Booktube. Okay, so these are my Brandon Sanderson books. I had never read Brandon Sanderson before a few weeks ago. Around Christmas time, I read The Mistborn, which is the first book of his that I read, and I really liked it. I actually got to meet him at a workshop last year, an artist workshop. He did this fantastic demo with Dan DeSantos where they took suggestions from the audience for the synopsis of a story, came up with a story, illustrated the cover, well, Dan DeSantos illustrating the cover, while Brandon Sanderson made up the story in front of us. And it was a lot of fun. It was really cool. And then he gave a great speech that just gave a lot of really helpful advice for writers and creatives in general. And then I got to talk to him and ask him some questions, and he had some really helpful answers. I was like, well, I hear a lot of people talk about his work, but I had never actually read any of it. So I went ahead and read Mistborn and really enjoyed it. So I'm actually really excited to read these. I think they were a lot of fun, and I think I'm going to have fun reading the rest of them. Whew, that pile over there is getting a little precarious, we'll say. It's, if you hear a crash, you know what happened. So this is one that I picked up thanks to a Booktube channel that I love called Media Death Cult. And they have a Discord channel as well where there's a ton of cool sci-fi readers over there. And this is one of the books that Moid, the booktuber who runs the channel, has mentioned very favorably several times. I've also seen other people in the chat talk about how much they liked it. So I figured it's a little off the beaten path for me, but I'm going to give it a try. I'm very curious what it is about this story that so many people are responding to and enjoying. And we'll see. The pile's still standing. It hasn't gone down yet. So, confession time, Guilty Secrets. I know nothing about this book. I bought it because of the cover. I have never heard of the author. I didn't bother to read the synopsis. I just fell in love with the way that the cover was designed, the image. I love the way that it mixes the graphic design with the more realistic three-dimensional things. And the color palette I thought was just really beautiful. The dark grays and golds just really appealed to me. And it also solved some creative challenges I've been having in a few paintings that I'm working on that I want to introduce some similar elements to. So I bought this so that I could put it on my desk where I paint and look at it to help me remember the ideas it gave me for how to solve that painting. Maybe I should find out if this book is any good or if people like it, see if it's worth reading. I don't know, but I love the cover. Okay, getting to the end here. We're making good time. So this one is another one. I put it kind of in the same category as the Joe Abercrombie one. This is another author that I have seen on the sci-fi fantasy section that I often walk past and don't pay much attention to because the covers never appeal to me. They've looked more of like a detective murder story, which I don't know, maybe those are good stories. I've never really read any of them, so I don't know. But it never like called out to me of like, I really want to read this one. So a lot of people seem to really enjoy this. I've heard a lot of people talk about it very highly, really like the character, really like the way that it's written, the tone of voice that it's written in. So I'm going to give it a try and see what my thoughts are on it. And if I like it, then apparently there's a whole bunch more to read. So we'll see how it goes. And if it's terrible, I blame Booktube for making me read it. So this one is a lot of fun. This is Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. And I have never read a Michael Crichton book in my life. I have seen the Jurassic Park movies and I enjoyed them for the most part. Most of them were fun. But it never occurred to me to read the book. It never seemed like something that would be interesting to read until I heard so many people talking about how good the book was and how, even like compared to the movie, how good the book is. When I was at the bookstore, I happened across this really pretty copy of Jurassic Park. It's like a leather finish that's engraved with the words and image. And I'm not a big fan of like really graphic, like black, red, green, yellow, like a lot of the Jurassic Park cover and imagery usually is. So this really nice, quiet, classy looking version of it really appealed to me. So I figured if ever I'm going to buy it, I'm going to buy it now. On the Media Death Cult channel, they just finished doing a read-along of this book. And so many people seem to have so much fun reading it that I can't wait to read it. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So this one is Worlds Enough Time by Dan Simmons. And I really loved the Hyperion series that Dan Simmons wrote. And I know that he's written a lot of stuff that's not sci-fi fantasy, which I know I love the writer, but for some reason, as soon as he steps out of the sci-fi fantasy, I'm like, I don't know if I'll like it. I don't know if I should read it. So I've avoided reading a lot of his other books that are not in the sci-fi fantasy genre, but I happened to see this one for a good price that's, I guess, like novellas, 5 novellas that are all speculative fiction, sci-fi fantasy. And so I'm really intrigued. I think this is going to be really good. I've been reading a lot more novellas and short stories in the last year or two than I ever used to, and finding that an elegance to how cut down they are from a novel. I'm really curious to see what his writing is like in this format. So this one I don't know much about. I've heard mixed reviews on this one. Some people seem to really like it. Some people don't like it. But I saw it on sale for $10 at my bookstore. A really nice hard copy version of it with a soft cover dust jacket. So I figured $10. I'll take a gamble. We'll give it a try. Hopefully the people who enjoyed it were right and the people who didn't were wrong. Can you be right or wrong about those things? Hopefully I enjoy it. We'll see how it goes. And lastly, Allison Reynolds. So this is another one that I got the idea to buy from the Media Death Cult channel that I really like. And I'll make sure to put a link in the description below because I really love that channel. And I think everyone would love that channel. So these ones are by a sci-fi writer that I haven't read before. But it turns out that I've had a dusty 20-year-old paperback in my bookshelf of one of his books, which also just happens to be the one book that everyone in that Discord channel recommends starting out with. So I'm like, perfect. So I read the paperback I had, House of Suns, and it was so good. I really, really enjoyed it. I love the characters. I loved some of the ideas of like AI and different types of creatures and lifespans that were in that book. It was a lot of fun. It was a really good sci-fi book. I immediately went out and bought 2 more books by the same writer. I believe these are 2 different first books in 2 different series. I think these are going to be really good. If they are anything like House of Suns or just equal quality of writing, I'm gonna love these. Oh, and I forgot this one when I first brought all my books down, but this is another book I picked up at the very beginning of the year. Kim Stanley Robinson, Red Moon. I'm not sure how I feel about this one. I'm a little trepidatious. Part of me thinks it's going to be really good. It has really great reviews, but I've never read any of his books, so I don't know what his writing style is like. It's supposed to be ecological sci-fi, which is not a subgenre of sci-fi I have much experience with, so I'm not sure if I'm gonna like it. I'm not sure what I'm gonna think of it, but I am curious, so I bought it and we're gonna see how it goes. I hope I love it. I hope it is as good as all of the reviews say that it is. Whew. So that was the book haul. I think we got everything. I got all the books. Yes. I don't normally buy this many books in a month. I've been on a bender. What can I say? I don't know what's wrong with me. I hope you guys had as much fun as I did going through them all and seeing all the variety of treasures. I have so much reading to do. This is a good problem to have. I'd like to say I will slow down, but who's to say? Next month might be just as bad. Maybe not. Maybe I'll control myself. If you guys have read any of these books or have any thoughts on where I should start or if there's any I should avoid, I'd love to hear about it. Let me know in the comments below. And until the next video, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.